While many companies are just starting to explore AI in cybersecurity, Sophos has been using it for years. From machine learning to generative AI, they've been ahead of the curve in helping security teams stay proactive. Joining me is Chester Wisniewski from Sophos to discuss how AI is evolving and what it means for businesses and partners today. Hi, Chester.
Hello, Sydney. Good to see you again.
Sophos has been leveraging AI for years. How did this journey start, and how has AI evolved in cybersecurity?
Well, AI it's been a term we've been using in computing for a very long time, and different components of it have been involved in cyber defense, going all the way back to the days of antivirus before we had as sophisticated tools as we have now. And I think the big push at Sophos started around 9 years ago or so. We made an acquisition of an AI centric company called Invincia, and ever since we've been building more and more AI into different components of our products. So even if we're looking at just the pieces in our products, that's going back almost 10 years now. So there's a lot of history behind how these technologies are being used in our products. And when we started out, it was mostly focused on malware detection, right? So if people are familiar with our mobile security product for Android, that's all machine learning or deep learning based technology. And that shows you how I think we think of AI when we hear a lot of the headlines as being a bit wasteful of energy and cooling and all this kind of stuff. Different types of AI work very differently. And in fact, the reason we use that technology on mobile devices is because it's the opposite. It's so efficient and uses such a small amount of memory and footprint on your phone, you don't even know it's there, and it doesn't affect your battery life. And that's obviously very important to people. So different types of these technologies we're going to use in different areas of different products to provide different enhancements for our customers and users as appropriate based on energy consumption and efficacy and how accurate they are. And all these kind of different factors go into how we use these in our products.
Many people hear AI and immediately think of generative AI. But Sophos has been using machine learning and deep learning for malware detection for nearly a decade. Can you explain the different types of AI and how they apply to cybersecurity?
Sure. We don't have time to do the entire PhD class on data science here, but I'll kind of go over the high level areas briefly to kind of summarize. And you mentioned deep learning or machine learning. Also, people may have heard the term neural networks, which is used in most all of these technologies. And I think, when we look at the more deep learning side that we use for malware detection, those types of technologies have a tendency to be very efficient. But part of that's because we train them using known stuff, right? So we have a million samples of malware that we've identified that humans have correctly already marked as something that we know is to be bad. We have another million files that makes up all kinds of good things so that we can teach it not just what things look like malware, but we can teach it what things look like good things. And these things are Microsoft Office and Windows and Photoshop and all kinds of legitimate things that we know are good things. And because those things are known ahead of time when we're training the model has a high degree of accuracy, right? So if we're worried about things like, people throw around the word hallucination when large language models make mistakes or tell us untruths, you don't get that kind of a result typically in a machine learning or deep learning type situation because the inputs are very pure. This is a set of good things, this is a set of bad things, and then the algorithm does a very good job at sorting out between the two very effectively. Now, when we look at things like generative AI, one, it's generative because it's not following a specific rule set per se. It's probabilistic. It's weighing what the next thing is that is likely to give you the thing that you're asking for. Whether you're asking it to make a picture of a kitten on a beach blanket and it's going to generate an image that it thinks looks like that, or whether you're talking to a chat bot or any of the other experiences people may have had with some of the tools like ChatGPT and other tools that are out there. But it's trained on massive amounts of information that are not all true or accurate, right? There's lawsuits going on with these companies because they've literally copied the internet and fed it into these machines. And all of us have seen plenty of things on the internet that aren't true. And a lot of that information has gone into these things. And so they're not getting this very clear signal of this is good, this is bad. Instead, we're trying to generically teach them a whole bunch of things about the world. And so they're more prone to error. because of that. They're also quite large, right? It takes thousands of GPUs and gigawatts of power sometimes to train these models. And only a few companies, have the resources to do that. And people are probably familiar with OpenAI or Hugging Face or Google and Facebook, of course. And most recently, there was in the news a new Chinese model that was released that's quite efficient called DeepSeek. So there's a bit of competition there, but it's not something you're likely to do in your garage.
Compared to competitors just now jumping on the AI bandwagon, how does Sophos' long history with AI give security teams an advantage?
Well, I think we've got a really integrated system within Sophos and how we work. We don't have a lot of silos. So, we've got a lot of these data scientists that initially we gained when we acquired Invincia all those years ago. But we've continued to build those teams, and they can integrate very tightly with our engineering teams, but also with our MDR service. So because of the fact that we're actively in a position that we're protecting customers every day with our products as well, that allows us to kind of iterate quite quickly on trying out new things. It's like, what kind of problems are our analysts having protecting our customers in MDR that we can try to see if AI might be a solution to help us automate? And then if we've got a good idea, we can test it out on ourselves without experimenting on our customers, because we can try those things out with our experts that are already doing that work on our customers' behalf. And if it benefits them, it's highly likely going to be very useful to the end users as well in protecting themselves, because they're doing the same work that some of them have chosen to kind of outsource to our teams. But by not having like narrow little departments, we don't just have like people doing AI work all by themselves and coming up with their own ideas. They're integrated really well with our product teams and our engineering teams that build our software and our products, and also the people that are literally using it to protect people every day. And I think that gives them new ideas of things we can try, and it also allows us to try things that fail without impacting our customers and shipping something and finding out later that maybe it's not accurate enough or it doesn't achieve the outcomes that our customers would desire. And that's, I think, a big advantage of being as large as we are and having as many different product lines and things. That allows us to really learn from those experiences and ensure that what's being delivered to the end customer is going to fit into their workflow.
For channel partners and MSPs, what's the biggest takeaway from Sophos' deep AI expertise?
Well, I think the channel gets the same advantages our internal teams get, which is scalability, right? Trained cybersecurity people are very difficult to come by these days. And we want to get the most from them, but we also need to keep them happy. And a lot of the work we have to do is kind of a lot of drudgery to some degree. So AI can benefit in a few ways, but it allows, of course, an MSP or an MSSP to potentially be able to scale their services with fewer engineers, which is obviously always desirable. It makes your product more affordable to your clients, but it also allows us to get rid of some of that drudgery to reduce burnout. Anybody that's had to work in a security operations center or a SOC, a lot of the work is triaging alerts. All these tools, these security tools, your spam tool, your XDR tool, all these things are generating hundreds, thousands of alerts every day, all the time. And it's like, gosh, like somebody has to sort through all that. And it's kind of boring. And it's good training when you're starting out your career, you're starting out, entry-level analyst to get exposed to some of this stuff. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of data. And humans aren't good at processing large amounts of data. Machines are. And so this is where, AI can really assist in, I think, job satisfaction. If you ask those people working in those types of positions, most of them live to track down the criminals if they're breaking into the network, and they want to kick them out and do hand-to-hand combat with the criminals, or keyboard-to-keyboard combat with the criminals, not triage alerts, right? And so if we can get the machines to help make the triaging process much more quick with AI, where the AI can largely do it for you with a human supervision to make sure that the accuracy is to the level that you're expecting, that leaves more time to go do the fun work, fun for the analysts anyway, which is going on a threat hunt and tracking down adversaries if they've managed to breach the defenses. And when we're looking for the successful outcomes for our channel partners' customers, what's successful is obviously preventing as much of this as we can. But more than that, if a incident is going to occur, it's how quickly can we stop the incident and get you back to normal, because that's where your costs start adding up from incidents, is how long the adversary has been in your network causing harm. And the AI assistance to expedite a bunch of the tasks in those threat hunts means you get to detection and response much more quickly than you would without them. and that saves money and increases customer satisfaction.
We know that speed is everything in cybersecurity. How is AI reducing response times and making security operations more efficient?
Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself. I was just talking about that, right? There's lots of things that a person can do but can't do well. Like go back to the triaging we were talking about. Like thousands of alerts is hard for a human mind to get their head around, and the machine can summarize them in a way, but may not know what to do with them. So it's really a partnership between the humans and the machines. The machines processing those large quantities of data for us and instantaneously, and then the humans being able to apply our intellect to spot the trends and behaviors that may be malicious. And if you think of in any given environment, one computer might have a whole bunch of sensitive information on it, and another one doesn't. And the machine will never really know the difference between that like the human will. The human will be like, oh no, not the database server. Like we've got to get all hands on deck to go deal with this problem. So there's always going to be a human element here. We can't teach the machine everything about your computer environment that a human is going to understand and understand how to prioritize things. But we can have the machine surface up the list of all the dangerous things going on, and then the human could cherry pick the 2 or 3 that are top priorities that need to be addressed really quickly. So I think that's one way we look at it. Another thing that you have to do a lot as an analyst is criminals use what we call obfuscation techniques, but they scramble stuff to make it hard to analyze, to try to bypass antivirus, but also to try to slow down the humans that might run across their tools when they're on your computers after they break in, make it hard for those analysts to figure out what those tools do. Now I can, with generative AI tools, I can like take one of these scripts that a criminal's left behind, ask it, what does this do? And in 3 seconds, it comes back and it goes, oh, it modifies the computer like this, and it copies a file from this website in Russia, and it executes it, and then it sets itself to auto start every time the computer turns on. If I can get that kind of response in 3 seconds, that would take me half an hour, 45 minutes normally I can undo it. I know how to do it, but I'm not as fast as the computer can be at doing it. And so it's making me much more efficient. I'm making the decision of what's the next decision I need to make in order to continue this threat hunt. And I'm doing it in seconds instead of maybe in a half an hour or an hour. Most of us might speak English or French or Spanish, but most of us don't speak SQL, with the database language and it's another place where these machines are incredibly good at translating. We think about translating human languages when we're talking to a chatbot, but we could also use it for translating to machine languages to help us as analysts again. So I need to find all the computers in my environment that have a particular piece of software on them because it has a bug, and I need to patch it right away so criminals can't break in using it. Being able to ask in English language, the machine, okay, can you show me all the computers with Photoshop version 17.5, and getting a response back instead of having to write that query. Again, I've been in computing 25 years. I know how to write the query, but gosh, that's a heck of a lot slower for me to figure out how to tell the machine which specific thing to look for than it is to ask for the machine's help. So these are the kinds of areas where I think we're going to see pragmatic benefits that may not be some of the hype that we hear on the evening news about how generative AI is going to doom the world, but it's the kind of stuff that makes our lives easier and faster every day.
You mentioned how AI can work alongside human analysts rather than replacing them. Now, for MSPs and partners, automation is a huge advantage. How does AI help them scale security without needing massive resources?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the ways that I've already discussed, it can also help us create traditional automation that's maybe more efficient and doesn't need all the intelligence of a generative AI model, right? So most people have probably used or at least heard of a lot of Microsoft projects called Copilot. They've got it for their GitHub service that helps you write code. They've got Copilot for Office now and different things. That kind of thing, I think, is another area where you're able to create simpler automations, but use the generative AI to create the simpler things. So I can ask the machine to help me automate a task. I have a task I have to do all the time. It may not require a full AI data center to do that task, but getting that automation written is very useful. Another area is finding outliers in large data sets, right? Again, something humans are bad at. And this is something we think about in like, say, our malware analysis lab. We get 3 million malware samples come in every day. Well, we clearly don't have enough analysts that we're going to look at all those samples. The ones that we know are bad just go into the bad bucket and And the humans are always looking for the interesting ones. Which of these are new that we haven't seen before, so we can have a human analyze it and determine what it's doing. And maybe it's a nation state attack from China or Russia or something that we're worried about. But how do I find that out of those 3 million samples, right? And there's another place where these automation tools can enable that partnership to be so much more efficient. Instead of spending 2 hours every morning coming up with database queries, trying to figure out where the outliers are, I can ask the machine, give me 100 of the latest virus samples from the feed that don't look like previous virus samples. And boom, there's a list. And now I've got, I'm off to the races, and I'm able to start doing my analysis. And I think there's tasks like that in many of our environments where we know, if you're an MSP and you're taking on the responsibility for managing your customer's environment, there's a lot of things that you can automate that'll make your analysts a lot faster at replicating tasks across those customers. And you're probably doing that now, but you're probably writing your own AutoIt scripts or Python scripts and things like this to do it. And I think I think AI will transform how we do a lot of that automation. Some of it will use AI itself. And for larger partners out there, they may be experimenting with training some of their own small models to help do some of these tasks. But even for customers that aren't large enough to maybe want to create their own AI tasks, they can use the AI to create traditional automations much more quickly. And I think it's always about speed in the end. I mean, obviously, when we're talking about these threats, not just because it makes people more efficient, but when you have incidents, time is your enemy. I mean, the longer the criminal has to do their mayhem in the environment is always going to be more expensive. So speed has multiple benefits if we can use it to help our humans.
What's next for AI-driven incident response, and how do you see this evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, I think we're just going to continue to see iterations on these very practical concepts, but I think it's a lot like full self-driving maybe in cars, which is we're not quite there yet to let the machines make all the decisions, but we're getting closer and closer and closer to automating these things. I would love to see a world where all of the triaging is primarily handled by the machine and there's no human involved at all. And I think we're getting ever closer to that, and back to kind of us developing things internally and experimenting with them. We can kind of very carefully measure and monitor that growth of accuracy as it continues to get better and better and better to where we're going to feel comfortable taking our hands off the wheel and letting it do it on its own. And I mean, that's the end goal for a lot of these things. I mean, certain things will always have humans in the loop, but other things, I think, that's where we're heading, is trying to get, especially the mundane tasks, because sometimes it's important for the humans to have a view of what's going on just to spot trends and like we need to be on top of these tools, because to make the tools smart, we have to teach them, and we can't teach them if we don't know anything anymore. So we have to stay experts so we can continue to teach the machine things. And but some of these tasks like triaging and things like that, I think we would all love to just hand off to the machines. And I think as well as I think we're going to see a lot more of the machines being involved in helping us tackle things like phishing and social engineering attacks, where they're already beyond the sophistication of the average person to detect, which means as security professionals, we have an obligation to stop those things from getting onto your phone or in your inbox, right? Like in the old days when criminals couldn't spell well or have bad grammar, we could try to teach people to look for those things. Generative AI has eliminated that, right? The spams I get today, sometimes I almost think that like they look too professional. Like that if a real marketing person had sent me this email, maybe it would have more errors because real people make mistakes and the machine just doesn't make those mistakes. So I think there's a lot of work and energy going into how can we stop those cryptocurrency scams you're getting text messages for? How can we stop those business email compromise emails that are really sophisticated, going to your executives, trying to trick them into doing wire transfers? Those types of things, again, today we're already using generative AI to help with those tasks. But I think that's where we're going to see more societal benefit and yield from these things down the road, is more proactive elimination of these social threats and things like that.
There's been a lot of talk about AI-generated cyber threats, from deepfakes to AI-powered phishing, like you mentioned. But how much of this is actually happening? Chester, are attackers really using AI at scale, or is it more hype than reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's a spectrum. It's definitely happening, and I don't think it's happening in the way that a lot of people envisioned that it was going to happen, right? I think people were worried about people writing new ransomware and having the machines write it for them. And we've seen experiments with people trying to do that, but that's not really that much of a thing. I think we were really concerned that the machines would be better at finding exploits in our software, and we're going to be able to help people break into our firewalls or our VPN appliances and this type of thing. And it turns out most AI in the world is owned by the good guys, not the bad guys. And that means if it gets really good at finding those bugs, then we're going to use it to find the bugs and close them and not leave them open for the criminals to come along and use AI to find them. So it turns out that's a benefit to the defender. And I think we're starting to yield some benefits from that, like being able to, again, automate more of our software bugs and find them more quickly and patch them so they can't be exploited and by criminals. But there were a lot of fear around those areas. Those things didn't happen. Now, where there is a lot happening are some of the things you meant, other things you mentioned there, where clearly the emails and the phishing attacks over our phones and emails have gotten a lot better by abusing these technologies. There's no way to know for sure that criminals are using AI to write them, other than they just suddenly got a heck of a lot better at English and more professional. So it just doesn't add up to me that they're not using it. It's pretty clear that they must be. Detecting things that are generated by AI is very hard. So there's no guaranteed way to know unless occasionally they screw up. We have seen Twitter bots that literally say like, "I'm out of credits with OpenAI. Please buy more credits so I can continue to spam things." Like, so occasionally it's like, "Yep, okay, we know they're definitely using ChatGPT in that bot." But that doesn't happen very often. Like, there's no way for us to provably know when it's being abused, but the quality of the lures suggest it's being abused quite heavily. The area that's emerging that I think not right now sophisticated actors are using, but not your everyday cyber criminal, uh, is an early warning sign typically. Like we've seen this with a lot of other technologies in the past, which is the most sophisticated attackers figure out a new way to do something, often a government. Maybe you remember Stuxnet when there was the United States and Israel allegedly attacked Iranian nuclear centrifuges, but it was a very novel attack like nobody had ever seen before in the world. And that's because like the best people at US Cyber Command apparently came up with how to do it. But after that, it was a blueprint for others to go, oh, we can copy that idea. And, eventually it trickles down. And I think we're seeing that with the deep fakes. Deep fake audio 2 years ago was quite expensive and quite poor. I actually cloned my own voice for a day playing with these projects to see how believable they were, right? And I probably spent 5 or 6 hours on it, and I got something that was kind of passable, but anybody that knew me wouldn't be fooled. They'd go, oh, it's kind of it sounds like you're really weird, stepbrother or something. It's like, it sounds like you, but not really. And then a year later, I went to do it, and it took me a half an hour, and it was 10 times better to do the same thing. And I was like, oh, it's still not perfect. My mom wouldn't be fooled, but a coworker might. Somebody that's not as familiar with me. And so now we're starting to see that being adopted in business email compromise scams. There's been a few headlines of some large multi-million-dollar heists where they've cloned the voice of a CFO or a CEO and convinced somebody to do a wire transfer, this type of thing. But those are very targeted attacks. Like that criminal has to put hours into that. They've got to go find the audio of the CEO giving a bunch of earnings calls and collect all those recordings to teach the AI. Like it's not simple yet, but when there's millions of dollars on the line, they'll do it. And so we are seeing it emerge. Another year from now, it might be one of these things with a 5-second audio clip and 29 cents of cloud compute time. It's a perfect clone. And then that's when we'll see it targeting everybody everywhere. So we should be prepared for that to come. And then similarly on deepfake videos, right? Today we see some sophisticated ones sometimes, but usually those take thousands of dollars to make and often days of computing time. And they can't be done in real time. I can't like make a fake Sydney that's here talking with me very reliably using this technology without investing a whole bunch of training effort and time and money on it. But the fact that it's possible means the cost will keep coming down and the speed will keep going up. And eventually we will have this problem. And so we need to be thinking not just about technology when we're thinking about security, but we need to be thinking about our processes. What process do we have in place to verify the identity of somebody we think we're talking to about something important? And it probably should not rely on an email or a text message that is very easily captured or duplicated by a criminal.
How is Sophos ensuring that security teams stay ahead of potential AI-generated threats?
Well, I think the most important part is choose a good partner like us because we have a whole bunch of incredibly smart people working on these problems and trying to stay on top of it. And it's hard. And that's the thing. Like, not every company is going to be able to have their own data science team of math nerds that know how to make this stuff. And it's difficult to stay informed even because there is a lot of hype, right? I mean, a lot of that hype's being used to generate the massive amounts of money required to get these startups investors, and they promise a lot of things that might be distracting, and you might be thinking something's a risk that isn't. And then other things might catch you by surprise because they're quite mundane, but they're actually really important, and they turn out to be a large risk to your security. So I think carefully culling your news sources is an important part. I think peer networks are really important as well. Talk to other CISOs, CTOs, CIOs within your peer groups to figure out what threats they see or what success they're having implementing some of these technologies for defense. I think it's incredibly uncommon in my almost 30 years in security to have a situation where the defenders are at an advantage over the attackers. It's just not a thing that normally happens. The attacker almost always has the advantage. And this time, the tables are turned. Like, we have the advantage here. We have the smart data scientists and all those great people graduating from the top universities in the country working on these problems. We've got the computing power. We've got the advantage to use these tools to erect better defenses. And I think the way to stay on top of it is to have a couple of reliable partners that you can ask questions of and have sit downs with and network with your peers about the latest things so that you get the benefit of scale from their knowledge as well as your own team's experiences.
Thank you, Chester, for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
You know, what stands out is that while attackers have historically had the advantage, AI is giving security teams the ability to stay ahead like never before. And with Sophos' years of AI expertise, they're in a strong position to help businesses and partners navigate this shift. If you'd like to learn more about how Sophos is leveraging AI to power cybersecurity solutions, visit the website on your screen. For the Channel Company, I'm Sydney Neely.